Hi, thank you for having me speak at the opening of the Asian Heritage Month. My name is Cha Poos. I am an instructor of dance at UCO. This coming fall will be my 20th year teaching. I've been in the US for 44 years. My family and I immigrated here from Seoul, Korea when I was 7 years old. And I have just some thoughts today to share with you about my immigrant journey and I think what it means to be an immigrant here in the US. Like I said, I've been here 44 years, and I think I spent the majority of that time thinking that I had to choose between Asian or American. I had to choose between my language or the American language, my culture or the American culture. And I think until I went back to Korea last year with UCO through the dance department, um, I, I realized when I went back that I actually am an American, Asian American, am an immigrant, and that it's okay to belong to both things. It took me a very, very long time. And so, if I can share my story and shed a little insight on how to straddle both worlds and be okay with it in this country and exist, not only exist, but thrive as an Asian American citizen of the United States, I hope that I can do that. Besides working at UCO, I always also run a nonprofit here in Oklahoma City called Race Dance Collective. The race stands for Radical Application of Creative Energy. And I created that about 12 years ago. I'm the founding director. There's a lot of people that run it now besides me. But I danced all my life, and I don't know that I would have had a career in dance had it not be that I watched my grandmother dance when I was a child, and so I wanted to share some stories with you about my family and about their immigrant journey as well as mine. About when my child was 11, my daughter Sajin, she came into my room and handed me a book, and it was a Mother's Day gift that she had made me. And it said on one of the pages, it said HUI, which is my name spelled phonetically here. And for the H, it was an acronym for humble, U, unique, and I, immigrant. And I thought about my journey, but I also thought that, I'm not the only person that has immigrated here. My whole family immigrated here, and so did thousands of Asian Americans just like you, whether you're here visiting and going to school or whether you're going to stay. We're all here, and I think it's time that we stop feeling like visitors. I think it's time that we have some ownership. So my grandmother, like I was saying, used to dance for me when I was small. And I remember watching her, and it was very natural. I didn't think anything of it, but I think now back, and it was quite an unusual sight, and it was the most beautiful thing I had seen. And she would be so expressive and lost in the music, and I think it's because her dancing and her movement was so tied to the history of Korea. She would dance and sing the Arirang, which is a traditional. It's basically the anthem of Korea, and it was derived from the suffering of colonization and the pain of being split into two countries. And my grandmother would dance, and I would just sneak out of my room at night and watch her. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I still dance today, because she inspired me to try to find that freedom in the movement and her ability to be lost in what she was doing. I think we all kind of strive for having that connection to the arts in some way, or to something that we're doing that we can be completely free in ourselves. And so I thank her for that. My grandmother was an HUI, humble, unique immigrant. Um, I'll share a story with my about my parents, my mom and dad. They had an arranged marriage. That wasn't uncommon back in the day. I guess the story is my grandfather said that my mother was argumentative as a child, and she would tell him when they were in an argument that she wanted to marry someone who didn't talk back to her. And so my grandfather had worked with a man in the factory where he worked who hadn't spoken in like 3 years. So he said, perfect. And he set them up and they went on dates. And my mother came home one day and said, I hate the guy. He doesn't talk. He doesn't look at me. And the nature of their relationship, I guess he set them up and they were married. So 4 years later, I was born, and we had a one-bedroom, tiny little house in Korea. And I pretty much stayed with them until we moved here and I could have my bedroom that I shared with my grandmother. So I grew up the first 6 years of my life listening to my father at night when we're sleeping. And he would not talk during the day, but at night he had a lot to say. And so I had that experience as a child, getting to know my father and getting to know his thoughts, even though nobody else did besides my mom. He loved America. He worked for General Motors for 20 years. He on the night shift. He built things from scratch. If he didn't know how to do it, he would teach himself how, just by having books, and he'd turn the pages and highlight things. And he was self-taught. Guitar, sewing. He made my high school prom dress. He would build furniture. My mom still has to this day furniture from scratch that he built. My father was a humble, unique immigrant. My aunt married my uncle, who's originally from Henrietta, Oklahoma, which a lot of people always ask how I got here. Well, he is how we got here. I think about a lot of immigrants who have to do this journey on their own. It took our family 10 years, and that's with someone helping us. So I think there's got to be something done for people who are not native speaking to help them through the process, because 10 years is a long time, and I can almost guarantee you it would have been much harder had we not had my uncle from Henrietta helping. But I think my aunt having the moxie to step out of her culture and marry someone from America, move thousands of miles away, send for her family, and take a chance on that. I think that my aunt, she's tough, she's brutally honest, and I love her so much because we're literally here because of her and my uncle. My aunt is a humble, unique immigrant. I think that my mom's voice for me as a child growing up here in America, not understanding where I belong, was the most important thing in why I play a leadership role this day. I think a lot of Asian cultures tend to muffle a lot of times, especially if you're the youngest child, but a girl. It's not always easy to speak up and to speak out and to stand up for what you want. And my mother was brilliant at the way that she crafted the relationship between getting me to understand my place or what I was supposed to do, but then also giving me the voice here and saying to me, I love the way you fight for things, even though it was kind of shunned upon in our culture. So I got the best of both worlds. I think it could have been misconstrued as confusing, but I didn't look at it that way. And so I fight for things I believe in. I think right now, being an Asian and American here in this country, I think we have to fight, and I think we can do it without violence. But I do think that staying humble in the way that most people think Asians are humble is not the way to do it. I think we have to take action. I think we have to defend ourselves. I think we need to speak out. I think we need to have our voices heard and tell our stories, which is one of the reasons why I said yes when they asked if I wanted to do this. Some of these stories I'm sharing with you I've never shared. And honestly, I spent so much time in my life suppressing my immigration status, suppressing the fact that I don't originally come from here. And I think it was just the timing of when I came, and what I wanted was to just belong, and my family's very strong sense of you're an American now. And so I don't apologize for the decisions that I made in the past. I think they're all who I am and what crafted me to be in the position that I'm in now. But I also no longer apologize for being an Asian American. I no longer apologize for being an immigrant. I no longer apologize for having a voice. Because of my mother, I have the voice that I have today. My mother is a humble, unique immigrant. In the fall, I will be receiving an award that UCO gives out called the Women Who Inspire. And I think that when I receive that award, I will be receiving that as a member of this community and a member of the Korean American community. But I will also be receiving that as the granddaughter to Jim Boon Cha. I will be receiving it as the daughter to Byung Soo and Park Soon Cha. I will be receiving it as the mother to Sejin and Gunnar Poos. I will be receiving it as a teacher to all of the students at UCO Dance. I will be receiving it as the founding director of Race Dance Collective, and I will be receiving it as an immigrant. Your humble, unique immigrant. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the week.